When I was 16, I stood at the edge of my world. Kosovo behind me. A world of beauty and struggle, where the air carried the warmth of my family. Ahead lay the unknown, a vast horizon that felt both impossible and endless. At the airport, I carried my mom's hand like an anchor, but she didn't speak. Her eyes, though, whispered everything I needed to hear. Be strong, not just for yourself, but for all of us. Let's take a moment. Think of a time when you felt that somebody truly saw you. I'm not just talking about that version of you that you feel comfortable in sharing, that version that sometimes can tick a box or two. I'm talking about that true, honest version of yourself. Sometimes the funny version, the confident, the complex version. How did that feel? Did you feel a sense of relief? Something like finding that last piece of chocolate you really needed and you totally forgot you had? And so I'd like for you to hang on to that feeling, because this feeling of being seen is at the core of my story. Years later, I became a social worker. I realized that question about how to honor those who come before us echoed in the life of so many refugees who had left everything behind. And what waited them? Services delivered by people with polite faces and a ton of paperwork. The problem was that these programs were failing to see what truly mattered: these people's strengths, their cultural backgrounds, and their stories. And that's what led me to create collaboration, a way that we can partner with people that we work while honoring their lives and their stories and their cultures. But before I dive into all this theory, I'm going to invite you and share with you something very personal, a letter I wrote to a woman who taught me everything: how to carry hope, give strength, and believe in something far greater than myself. In that letter, I also want to honor my dad, who stitched our family's life with warm scent of cornbread and an unwavering conviction that our Albanian heritage is a gift that we ought not to lose. Dear Mom, I've been thinking about you so much lately. Everything you went through and all that you gave up for me. I still see you coming home from a long day of teaching, somehow managing to sing me to sleep. You'd softly hum, Nina nona chica yame. You tucked me in with hope, even when the world felt heavy. You'd come home to a house that needed everything: laundry, cooking, cleaning, and you never complained. You pushed forward hour after hour as though your heart ran on a quiet but unbreakable fuel. Sometimes I'd sneak into your room to make the bed or fold a few shirts just to give you one less thing to do. You'd look at me with gratitude and whisper the words that became my compass. O nanas, inshallah krejt çka don realizohet. Inshallah veç dritë për sjellën jetë. May all your dreams come true. May your life be filled with only light. These words flickered in me like a candle. You were meant to be an engineer, the first woman in our family to imagine new horizons, but life shifted. You had me young, and instead of chasing your own dreams, you quietly poured them into mine. I didn't grasp what that meant until much later. When I left Kosovo at 16, hoping to come back and help rebuild, I had an idea how hard it would be. I worked at an all-night diner in Oklahoma, 12-hour graveyard shifts. One morning, I came home so exhausted that my apron, heavy with crumbed dollar bills, spilled onto the bed. I wasn't sure if I was collecting tips or auditioning for a reality show about living in a chaos. But there I was, barely able to keep my eyes open. You called right then and heard the weariness in my voice. You asked if I was truly okay. I wanted to lie, to say everything was fine. But your lullaby still echoed in my mind, reminded me that we owe it to our dreams to be honest. So I admitted how exhausted I was. You didn't ask me to give up. You only told me to keep going. Because back in Kosovo at that time, daughters like me didn't always get the chance to dream. Mom, you and Dad both taught me that it takes strength in holding on to what matters, even if it's just a promise in the dark. Eventually, though, I found myself drawn to an entirely different path, social work. I can still hear the confusion in your voice. Social work? What even is that? And honestly, I wasn't completely sure myself either. But as I looked around and saw countless refugees and immigrants, families like ours getting lost in systems that never really were built for them, I realized policies alone can't heal war-torn hearts. People need genuine partnerships, empathy, and someone who will see their story as more than just the paperwork. So I chose social work as a bridge forward. One day, I met a Kosovar refugee whose world had been ripped apart by the war. She had lost her home, and her daughter was brutally violated in front of her. A cruelty meant to shatter her spirit completely. Yet somehow she refused to abandon the ties that shaped her, no matter how many times she was told to put herself first. Each time I spoke with her, I heard your calm resolve, your unwavering spirit. She was exactly like you and Dad, holding on to hope even when the world tried its hardest to tear it apart. Mom, I've come to realize how many of us carry these little flames, our hopes, our parents' dreams, our ancestors' faith, and how these flames can burn brighter if someone just recognizes they exist. You showed me that I never walk alone. That's cornbread on cold mornings, and your lullaby each night were as strong as any official document that said we belonged. Thank you for loving me, quietly yet fiercely, for teaching me that the strongest kind of love doesn't always roar, it whispers. I promise I'll keep that flame alive for our family, for those who feel unseen, and for those who need just one person to believe in them the way you and Dad believed in me. With all my love, Venera. This letter isn't just about my mom and me. This letter is about thousands of families who feel torn between the old world and the new. It's about parents who sacrifice their dreams so their children can chase theirs. And it's about all of us who need the reminder that sometimes protecting that little fragile flame is the bravest, yet the most exhausting thing you can do. Today, there are over 100 million people worldwide who've been forced to flee their homes. They each carry their own stories, their own fragile flames, just as fragile as we did when we came from Kosovo. Yet the sad thing is that they still sometimes are waited on by programs and services that don't really consider their true stories. When I began my career in academia as an assistant professor at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, I wondered, why do these programs fail to consider the whole story of the people they're working with? And this question burned a fire in my belly. One day, as my South Korean PhD student, Sang-won, and I were in my cramped office, over-caffeinated, as you can see a pattern here with me and coffee, surrounded by stacks of research, we kept seeing that people integrate in a different ways, that a lot of personal context really is important. Their personal beliefs, their religious background, their culture, their language, and family experiences, but there wasn't any framework broad enough to capture all these models. And that's what led us to develop the SSWR. This is the contextual approach to the acculturative stress framework. SSWR made one thing very clear. Healing can't come from policy or structure alone. If we ignore the cultural and personal layers of someone's life, even the best designed programs will falter. Here is how it works. There's 3 different spheres. First is the contextual, meaning that nobody adopts in vacuum. And like I said before, if we ignore religious belief, language, and how language shape how a person experiences moving or fleeing to a new place, we're really not going to be effective in helping the individuals we're working with. Next is influence, which speaks to how external forces like immigration policies, employment, social attitudes, this is how they all influence the stress that the person experiences as they integrate into the new culture. And then there's a third aspect, the acculturative stress. That unique tension of juggling 2 cultures. Maybe, as you come into the new country, you still hold on to those traditional family beliefs, but they really don't bring you any value into the new country. So you're stuck, you face that strain. So SSWR helps us see why people struggle, but not necessarily how to fix it. And this leads me to collaboration. It rejects the typical helper and receiver mindset and insists that we move forward together, placing the power back on the hands of those that are mostly influenced by the social structures. We do that by following 3 simple steps. We listen first. We don't stride in with a pre-packaged plan. We recognize that we are not aware of what's going on in the person's life. We listen to the people's story. We hear it fully, considering their culture, values, all of it, before we even decide our next steps. Second, we partner up. Work with individuals rather than on their behalf, letting them guide their own solutions. Third, that's when we transform systems. We don't just celebrate a few success stories. We push for real policy changes, and we try to make sure that these policies become inclusive and as culturally mindful as possible. And so now, I return to that key question. How do we honor the sacrifices of those who come before us? Each time we embrace genuine collaboration, each time we consider cultural roots as assets, not as barriers, each time we remember a father's cornbread or mom's lullaby is just as powerful as an official policy, we keep that flame alive. Together, maybe we can build a world where every voice is heard, every story honored, and every flame of hope grows brighter enough to guide us all. And I thank you. Sorry.
Thank you so much for that talk. I don't know. One thing that folks in the room may not know about you is that you are a very well-published academic scholar. Like, you have a very long publication record. But as I was listening today and in all of our sessions, I'm struck by how personal the story is that you chose to share. And I wonder if you would tell us just a little bit about what motivated you to share your talk in this format instead of the normal one that you would do.
Oh, thank you so much. I think that's a very good question. So I think that it's very important to share this personal side of a refugee, because I came to the United States as political asylee, and which is slightly different from a refugee, but again, left Kosovo, and it's very important to know that there's so much that a life of a refugee entails, so much sacrifice. And it's very important, especially here as social workers, to consider the entire context that they have to go through. And as we're working with them, think of it in that way, especially now with all these new policies that, that just have happened. There is so much need to be even more empathetic, and nobody can do that better than we as social workers.
Thank you so much. Can we get another round of applause for her?
Thank you.
Thank